Good afternoon, Chicago. Welcome on in. It's a special Wednesday edition of Chi-Town Weekly. I told you things were going to be a little crazy this week with my schedule, but we found time to fit in a show. And what a show we've got in store for you. The Bears are also having a strange short week this week. They play tomorrow night against the Commanders. So we will break that down and preview that game. And we've got a special guest on hand to help us do just that. They're on a losing streak, but that game against Minnesota, I kind of almost felt like a win, didn't it? And the Commanders, they're just bad. There's very few other ways to put it. It certainly feels like this is an opportunity for the Bears to end their losing streak and get back to their winning ways. Who knows, maybe even start a winning streak. The Bears aren't the only ones going to be in action during the week, though. The Chicago Blackhawks dropped the puck on the 2022-2023 season tonight. They're out in Colorado taking on the defending champion Avalanche. What's in store this season for the Blackhawks? We'll discuss that. And the Fighting Illini are ranked in football. All that and more. Buckle it on up. Let's go have some fun. And good afternoon, everyone. Adam Karnick with Chi-Town Weekly. So happy that you are here. Thanks again for the flexibility and the adjustments with the schedules. But we're here. We're ready to talk some sports, and we've got a special guest on the line joining us this afternoon from our sister station at USRN. He does play-by-play games for the NFL, the NHL, college football. I know I'm missing some things. Matthew Owens is here with us this afternoon. Matthew, how are you today?
Oh, I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me, and my apologies if I do sound a bit under the weather because, well, I am a bit under the weather. But, you know, the seasons change. We all get allergies, and, yeah, it's that fun time of the year. So apologies for that, but thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you are very welcome. Anytime. I'm glad you are able to do this because Matthew is going to be calling the Bears-Commanders game over on USRN tomorrow evening. So I thought, I've had him on for Neutral Zone before, and you do a great job, Matthew, with everything that I do. I just thought this is a great opportunity to get some extra perspective into this game tomorrow night.
I'm intrigued by this game tomorrow night. You kind of set it off the top there. Both of these teams have their issues. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
The issues are wide with both of these teams, but that's going to create for what you would hope is a competitive game. I know everybody on social media now has spent a week chastising Thursday Night Football and chastising the game that we saw last week with Denver and Indianapolis. By the way, let me just go out and say it. I'm not just saying this because I called it and not just saying it to try to pump up the network. I enjoy games like we got last week between Denver and Indy. I really love the low-scoring games just because we don't get them that much anymore, especially those kinds of games. We could get a similar game like that tomorrow night. I don't think that would surprise anyone. Listen, it's a perfect segue because we didn't see a touchdown last Thursday night. Even though the game went into overtime, we didn't see a single touchdown. Offensively speaking, these two teams struggle in a lot of areas, but to simplify it, I guess, the best, and you very well know this as the Chicago guy, the Bears can't pass the ball at all. Washington, meanwhile, cannot run the ball. So are any of these – is anybody going to be able to buck this trend here? And when I say Chicago can't throw the ball, and you probably know this very well, they're averaging 117 passing yards a game. In modern football, their team's putting up 117 passing yards in a quarter. Their team's putting up 117 passing yards in 3 drives. But by the way, 117 passing yards a game. Not only is that last in the league, that's last by a large margin. 31st in that category are the Giants at 154, and the Bears are at 117. You can do the quick math. They're nearly 40 yards per game behind the Giants throwing the ball. And you know, when are the Bears going to take it seriously on helping Justin Fields? I don't know. You probably know the answer more than I do on that.
Oh, you brought up a ton of good stuff there, Matthew. I enjoy a good defensive battle myself. Growing up a Bears fan, I'm cursed with trying to find the positives in watching a game where you put up 9 points and it was, but we held the other team to 6. And wasn't that awesome to watch? No, it was 3 hours of torture. What are you talking about? No, it wasn't torture. That was great football. Our Larry B., who runs, of course, everything here at IESR, he's right with us there on the great defensive battles. I always tease him all the time that he's a closet Bears fan. He doesn't realize it because he loves those kinds of games with the defense too. But you brought up 117 passing yards a game. The last game the Bears played against Kirk Cousins completed his first 17 pass attempts in the game. Justin Fields hasn't completed 17 passes in a game yet this season, much less in a row, in a half. You know, it's such a different offense that the Bears are running right now. But hopefully, I came out of the game against the Vikings very encouraged by that second half. Fields was 12 of 13. He had his first touchdown pass in a month. Now, it was one of those little pick passes where you just basically suspend the ball in midair while your receiver comes on a jet sweep. It's not like it was a thread the needles, step into it, what you typically think of when we say a touchdown pass, but it still goes in the stats as a touchdown pass. And he just seemed a lot more confident and composed in the second half of that ball game. And they turned around what was an 18-point deficit at one point to actually take the lead in that game against the Vikings. I was very encouraged by what I saw in the second half. As you're getting ready for this game, do you think that's going to translate and carry forward into this game against Washington?
Well, you would certainly hope so. I mean, it's so funny. You talk to different coaches, and some would say, momentum is something that carries over, every quarter, every game, and you just try to build it. Other coaches don't believe that momentum is something that carries over from week to week. So you certainly hope it does for Chicago on that side. But, I did their game week 2 on IE Sports Radio on the Mixler account for IE Sports Radio, the game against Green Bay. They started out that game great. They went down the field on their first drive, scored to take a 7-3 lead, and you thought, okay, you got the lead. Let's see what your defense can do. Granted, you are playing Aaron Rodgers, and we know what he and the Packers have done to the Bears, for however many years. But, you've got a really good defense. Let's see what you can do, and let's see if they can keep Justin Fields in the game. And they just did it. And I was really disappointed with that performance from the Bears week 2. When you go in, you get ready to call a game, you spend a week trying to learn everything you can about the team, and then you very closely pay attention to every single play. And I really thought we were going to get a better performance from Chicago on that night, and we just didn't. So,
yeah.
To the point of what you were asking, will the momentum, if you want to call it that, carry over from last week? Yeah, you'd like to think so, but then again, I did too after their start against Green Bay, and it never materialized. Ultimately, though, this is all going to come down to, can Chicago help out Justin Fields? I'm sure you have pounded that point home for weeks, even last year, but week after week. They did not do much of anything to give him any help at the skill positions. They don't have a number one receiver. They don't have one of those game-changing tight ends. But and I'll say this, too, and I'll be interested to hear what you think. I think the guy they need to give the ball to more and just keep giving it to him is Khalil Herbert. When he gets the ball in his hands, he does some things that not really anyone else does on that Chicago offense. So whether you're handing it off to him, whether you're throwing it to him, I like when Khalil Herbert tries to go out and make some plays for this Chicago offense. And I would really like to see more of that tomorrow night.
Yeah, Herbert is very intriguing. I like both running backs for the Bears, Montgomery and Herbert. It's one of the things that is a little there in the periphery right now for this season, but Montgomery is in the final year of his deal. And there, especially this offseason, there was a lot of talk of, will they bring Montgomery back? Should they sign him to an extension or let him play out, et cetera, et cetera? The biggest difference between Montgomery and Herbert right now, the reason why Montgomery is still number one in the depth chart, is in the passing game. Montgomery is a little bit more sure-handed as a receiver than Herbert, and Montgomery does a significantly better job than Herbert does in pass protection. That's the biggest thing that Herbert still needs to fix in his game. And that's, frankly, the biggest adjustment any running back needs to make when they come from college into the pros is pass protection, identifying who you are responsible for as a blocker and how to assist and help protect the quarterback. I remember when the Bears drafted Cedric Benson all those eons of years back, we're talking 20 years ago now, and that was the biggest issue he had, was he could not understand his role in pass protection, that he was frankly a liability when he would be in the backfield and the Bears would try to throw, to the point where other teams were able to key on and know, were they running or were they throwing based on who the running back was. Herbert's better than that, but that's the biggest thing Herbert still needs to work on. I would be just fine with the Bears deciding to let Montgomery walk this coming offseason to keep Herbert. I would also be fine with them deciding to bring Montgomery back because he is a very talented running back. The running attack as a whole has been something that has worked really well this season for the Bears. It wasn't so much last week against the Vikings. Fields actually led the team in rushing. I think he had 47 yards. Montgomery only had about 20, and Herbert only had just a couple of touches. But overall, the running game with both Montgomery and Herbert has been really effective this season. So I pulled up the numbers. You brought up how both teams are very low scoring coming into this game tomorrow. Chicago is 27th in the NFL, averaging 17.2 points a game. Washington is 26th, averaging 18 points a game. So they are within a point of each other for how much they put up in an average game. You mentioned that Washington can't run. Taryn brings up in the chat room that Washington has too many cooks in the kitchen, 3 running backs that they just rotate between. Carson Wentz might be playing with a bum shoulder in this game. What does Washington do to win this game? Let's start there, and then we'll come at it from the other angle. Let's start with Washington. What do the Commanders do in order to win this game?
Well, yeah, I mentioned, like you said, they can't run the ball, and they're 28th in rushing offense, only ahead of Pittsburgh, Miami, Tampa Bay, and if you can believe it, last is the reigning Super Bowl champion Rams. And, you know, that may be true that they have too many running backs that they're good for. The fact of the matter is, though, no matter if you have one running back, 2, 3, 5, 7, 15, you've got to attempt to run the ball. They only had 17 rushing attempts last week against Tennessee, 17 attempts for 43 yards. They're making Carson Wentz throw the ball far too much. He threw it 38 times last week. Listen, we all know what Carson Wentz is as a quarterback. Now listen, I don't think of Carson Wentz as a terrible, horrible, no good quarterback. Carson Wentz can manage a game just fine if you give him a rushing attack. They don't have that. And Carson Wentz certainly isn't a quarterback that's going to throw the ball 40, 45 times a game and win you games on a consistent level. So that's the problem for Washington, is that they just can't run the ball. I know that sounds incredibly simplified, but listen, I know we love watching Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and whoever else, name the quarterback. We love watching these guys throw for 400 yards and rush for 100 more and 5 touchdowns a game and put up 45 points a game. Football games still and always will be won up front in the trenches with a great offensive line that paves rushing lanes for your tailback. That's how football games have always been won, always will be. And if you can't run the ball, you don't stand a chance to consistently win games. So it sounds kind of simple. If you're Washington, find a rushing attack, but they haven't been able to so far. So are they magically going to find one? Likely not. So therefore, Carson Wentz has to cut down on the mistakes. Now we know Wentz is prone, let's say, to turn the ball over. And listen, the Chicago defense can take the ball away. That's one thing that they certainly can do. So if you're Washington, really got to limit the mistakes and limit the turnovers and then try to run the ball. I know this sounds very obvious, but like coming back to what I said a moment ago, to pick up rushing yards, you have to attempt to run the ball.
Yeah, and Washington is averaging 23 rushing attempts a game this season. They're only averaging 89 yards on the ground a game. Now, on the flip side, and this is, we often talk about how in football games you have strength versus strength, this is going to be weakness versus weakness. Washington only averages 89 yards a game on the ground offensively. The Bears' running defense is 31st in the NFL. They give up 170. The only defense that is worse is Seattle, giving up 170.2. Something's got to give there, right? Does that favor a defense? I feel like that would favor the defense because, as you've said, running is a mindset. You have to want to run the ball. And Washington, they only average 23 attempts per game. They haven't shown a desire to want to rush the football. So with Washington being bad at running, but Chicago being bad at stopping the run, who do you see that favoring?
It's interesting you bring that up because I was thinking about that a few moments ago. I was wondering who's going to be able to possess the ball more, or are we just going to are we going to be seeing 3 and outs the entire game? Because when you do think about it, you do wonder who's going to be able to just consistently move the chains. You don't really know with the issues that both of these offenses have. I'm with you, though. I think that would favor the Chicago defense more than it would favor the Washington offense when you just talk about running the ball. That's kind of what I would think. I don't know that. And one other thing about the Chicago run defense, I know the numbers look very bad, but you do have to put in some outliers on that. They gave up just a load of rushing yards against the Giants a couple of weeks ago, and there were a couple of reasons for that. First off, the Giants are a really good running team with a healthy Saquon Barkley, but remember, Daniel Jones got hurt in that game. Then he had to come back in hurt, so they basically stopped throwing the ball, and all the Giants were doing were running it. So that's a bit of an outlier on that. San Francisco ran the ball well against Chicago. Well, who doesn't San Francisco run the ball well against? I think that was about 170-some rushing yards at San Francisco. So, yeah, I know the numbers don't exactly make that Chicago run defense look great. I don't think they're that bad, though. I think there's a couple of outliers that's made it, I guess, magnified those numbers a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely something, too, I've brought up with it that, coming from a different angle, a lot of Bears fans right now are frustrated with the lack of a pass rush and the lack of sacks overall that the Bears have gotten. And I point out that, look, you have to earn the right to rush the passer. And until the Bears are able to show consistently that they're able to stop the run, that's just what teams are going to do. Doesn't matter how much of a passing league it is. If they know that they can run on you, well, why stop? The Giants game was a perfect example of that. First of all, Saquon Barkley, he's one of the top 5 individual running backs in the game, and the NFL's a better sport for having him healthy in it. And then the Bears dared Daniel Jones to beat them, and I credited Brian Dable at the time. I said, hey, he took a bomb on it. The Bears just thought that meant it would be with his arm, and they said, nah, we'll just do these bootlegs and keep running them until you prove you can stop them. So, yeah, the Giants showed that we don't need to throw the ball. We'll just keep running Barkley and then booting Daniel Jones out until you show you can stop it. And then Jones got hurt and they had to change that up a little bit. But now with the Bears, you asked the question about what the Bears can do to support Justin Fields. And that's, of course, been the $1 million question to this point in the season. they have so very few weapons, really none at the wide receiver position outside of Darnell Mooney. And Mooney's, frankly, in my opinion, Mooney's playing out of position, playing the X receiver. I feel like Mooney would be a lot better served if they played him as the Y or even the Z receiver from time to time and let somebody else handle the duties of that number one wide receiver, that X spot, because that's just not what Mooney does. They've got N'Keal Harry. I always say his name wrong. He's not going to play tomorrow. It's looking like Harry will make his Bears debut the next game, which will be a Monday night game, ironically enough, against his former team, the Patriots. One thing I was encouraged, though, from this past Sunday was the way they got Cole Kmet involved in the passing attack. He had 4 catches on 4 targets, and they were safe, easy, quick routes for both Fields and Kmet, where Fields was able to get the ball out very quick, and it was designed for him to get the ball out very quickly, and Kmet was able to just use his body and use his large frame to make an easy target for Fields. Short of getting different players, I feel like that's the answer right now for the Bears, is just make things as easy as you can with the players that you've got. Not that Justin necessarily needs things to be easy, but maybe some of the other guys do. So now Washington, their secondary struggles. Their defense as a whole, they're middle of the pack defensively. We talked about momentum earlier, about how this can carry forward. Are there any specific Bears players that you're kind of looking at this game as, if this player gets going, then the Bears will have success as we get ready for this game tomorrow night?
Like I said earlier, I really like Khalil Herbert. I think he brings a different dynamic to the offense when they can get him the ball. Like you said, they didn't give him the ball last week, which I found extremely interesting. But I really do like him. And Justin Fields, we know that he can run the ball. He's not as explosive of a runner as Lamar Jackson or even Josh Allen, but turn him loose. Let him run the ball. Let him get you some good yards on the ground. Now, certainly pound it into his skull to get down. Don't take any stupid hits. But let him run the ball more than he is. I've been surprised that he hasn't run as much. But, yeah, again, Khalil Herbert, I know I do sound like a broken record. I really do like him.
And Herbert, he's got a different running style. To your point, Montgomery is a little more evasive. Herbert is a little bit more one cut and go kind of a running back. I think part of the reason we didn't see Herbert as much, as Mike Pat hops into the chat room as well, now Mike is a Commanders fan. He's saying tomorrow's going to be an interesting game, to say the least. He was obviously picking his words very carefully there. I think part of the reason that Herbert wasn't used as much, you had Montgomery's first game back from an injury. They wanted to see what he could do, but I think they also wanted to put the ball in the air more. And again, Herbert doesn't do as well in the passing offense as Montgomery does. So I think that led to some more opportunities for Montgomery and, more importantly, fewer for Herbert. So it'll be interesting to see what they do if Herbert does get some more touches tomorrow night in Washington. And Fields, there was the play last week where Fields, he had a 52-yard touchdown run. It just got called back because of a block in the backing penalty on Emir Smith-Massett. If only that was the worst play that Emir Smith-Massett made on Sunday, then he would have been fine. If you would have told me at the time, oh, don't worry, he's going to make one way worse than this, oh boy, there would have been all kinds of problems. So Fields, he has started to make some moves out in the open space, but they are also trying, and he's been taking a lot of heat for this. The Bears offense has been taking a lot of heat with how little they've been throwing the ball. And some of that is because Fields has been somewhat quick to bail on a play and just try to start making plays with his feet. I heard earlier today, Logan Thomas is out for Washington. Johnny Dotson? Is that their rookie receiver with 4 touchdown catches? He is out for tomorrow. He will not be in. And for the Bears, Jalen Johnson will be in. He is back after missing the last 3 games with a quad injury. So injury news seems to be favoring the Bears going into this one. So what are your thoughts, Matthews, as we're getting ready to wrap up the Bears portion of the show? What are your thoughts going into the game tomorrow? Do you want to make a prediction?
Well, just to mention, Jahan Dotson is a big loss, record-setting receiver at Penn State. So that's a big loss for that Washington team. Oh, and Logan Thomas is too, big frame tight end. So hate to hear that they won't be available, especially Dotson. I was really looking forward to seeing him, but that doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Oh gosh, I would love to sit here and say I'm confident one way or another, but I'm not, because to my earlier point, I really don't know who's going to find first downs. Who's going to consistently move the chains and possess the ball? We've talked about all the holes that these offenses have. We haven't really talked about many strengths that they have because they don't have any. I know I'm doing a great job selling this game, but they don't have strengths and they have a bunch of weaknesses. So I would think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I guess I'll go Chicago. They're at home. I'll go Chicago. But a very low-scoring game again. We had 0 touchdowns from last Thursday night. We might only see 1 or 2 tomorrow. I'll take Chicago, though. Give me Chicago 19-13.
That sounds just about right. Yeah. The game opened. Washington was favored by a point by the bettors. That has flipped. It is now the Bears are favored by a point. I feel like this is one of the last times that the Bears should be favored for a while, that we should see. This should be a very winnable game for the Bears. I'm sure that Washington is saying those same things too in their locker room, but the big difference is in the Bears locker room right now, there's a feeling of, hey, we're going to rally around this and we're going to improve from this. Whereas, meanwhile, in the Washington locker room, their head coach is in the process of tossing their quarterback under the bus. So I'm going to give the edge to Chicago in this one. But I think, right around 20 to 13 sounds really, really good for a final score on this one. Taryn chimes in the chat room. He's saying Bears 17, Commanders 10. Mike, if you want to throw us a prediction in their first score too. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then there's another sport that those of you who are longtime listeners of the show know that I hold near and dear to myself, and I know that Matthew enjoys it as well. And it just started, well, technically over the weekend, but it feels like it got started last night. We're going to talk some hockey on the other sides of a break. This is Chi-Town Weekly, a special Wednesday afternoon edition here on IE Sports Radio. We'll be right back after this.
Are you a fan of the best teams in the Buckeye State? Then this is a show for you.
All right.
This is the State of Ohio Sports, where I, your host, Andrew Higginbotham, will bring you all the
3-4 minutes
professional
right
news
here
as
for
well as
a-
all things college
for a
from
short
Northeast
breather
Ohio
and a quick
Cleveland, all the way down to Southwest
grab a
Ohio and
drink or
Cincinnati,
something like that.
and even in the heart of the state, in the state
And let's
capital,
talk some
Columbus. So if this sounds like the show for you, check out the State of Ohio Sports show every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for
I
all
feel
that
almost
sports.
like I should apologize. I just teased it. Whoops, I forgot to mute my mic. Good thing. Thank you, Thank you, Taryn. Thank you, Taryn.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Matthew Owens of USRN, kind enough to join in on the episode today as we talked a lot of Bears Commanders there in the first half of the show. Matthew's going to be on the call tomorrow night on USRN calling that game. But Matthew and I are both big hockey fans. Matthew, a fan of the Carolina Hurricanes. Myself, of course, the Blackhawks. Matthew was very nice this past summer and allowed me to take part in some of USRN's coverage of NHL playoffs and the Stanley Cup Final. That was a lot of fun. Got to do some studio work, basically, some between the periods and pregame and postgame work with Matthew and Seth. So we wanted to talk a little bit of hockey tonight because the NHL officially dropped the puck over the weekend in Europe with a couple of games. And then we had the domestic start to the season was last night. Rangers over the Lightning, and Vegas took on Los Angeles Kings late last night, but the Blackhawks dropped the puck tonight. Now they're in Colorado taking on the defending champion Colorado Avalanche. I don't have high hopes for this game tonight for the Hawks, and that's kind of my feeling going into this season also, as Luke Richardson steps in to be the next head coach for the Blackhawks, and he has got a chore on his hands. Matthew, I know that USRN is going to be covering the Blackhawks game tonight. It's not going to be you on the call, but what are you kind of expecting for this game tonight, but then also for the Blackhawks as a whole? How are you kind of seeing them from afar? What are you expecting of the Blackhawks this season?
Yeah, we've got a doubleheader tonight on the network. I'll be doing Boston and Washington, which leads right into that Chicago-Colorado game. And I'll get settled in pretty quickly once Boston and Washington gets done, because I want to watch. I want to watch, see what Colorado looks like, obviously, but I need to get going and get prepping on Chicago, because they'll be on Friday Night Hockey on USRN next week when they play Detroit. So I'll be paying very close attention to Chicago tonight. You're right. It's going to be a pretty dark season, you would have to think, for the Blackhawks. They are going to struggle pretty much everywhere. If I'm being absolutely truthful about it. And really, the story of the Blackhawks season is, where do they trade Patrick Kane? That's what everybody's talking about. Where does Kane go? Everyone believes he'll be traded. Question is where. There's a lot of, well, the Rangers are one of the favorites, because the Rangers are, of course, a really good team, and they think if they can get Kane, then they'll sail to the top of as the betting favorites to win the cup. Buffalo is also certainly a place he could end up. Of course, he's from Buffalo, and the Sabres have a lot of players to move around. Toronto would be an option. But yeah, that's basically the story of the Blackhawks season, is where Patrick Kane ends up getting traded to. And like we were talking about during the break, that's a sad place to be in when that's your story of the season. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough watch throughout the year. Obviously, your hope is maybe you get some good production from young players that you didn't anticipate getting a lot of production from, and start building a future. We talked about this on the pregame show last night. Where this sport is now, it's really hard to rebuild, because there are so many good teams in both the East and the West. And really, those teams aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So if you're in rebuild mode, like Arizona, like Chicago, like Buffalo, you can get better, but it's hard. It's going to be hard to break through, whether that's this year, next year, 4 years from now, because the teams that are good right now, you think of Colorado, the Rangers, the Maple Leafs, the Hurricanes, where are they going, right? You expect those teams to be around for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. So it's going to be a tough season for Chicago, and it could be a tough couple of seasons for Chicago.
Yeah, and the Patrick Kane hits me hard too. He's one of the players, one of the reasons I got back into hockey. I was into hockey a little bit as a kid, more as a passing, oh, that looks cool. What is this? Oh, okay. But then in college, Patrick Kane was one of the reasons I started watching hockey again. I got hooked in, don't want to get into the whole story, but when I was in college was right when Taves and Kane and Keith and Seabrook were all gelling and becoming the super team, becoming that team. And Kane was the guy I latched onto as a fan. I love watching him, his speed, the way that he can, all the stick handling, all the moves, his shootouts are, for a while, they were required viewing. You know, when a game would go to a shootout, it would be stop what you're doing and watch Patrick Kane, because he's going to show you something you've never seen before. And so to hear that the guy that is still my favorite player on the team, that it's a foregone conclusion he's going to be gone, that's hard. I'm going to be putting on my Patrick Kane sweater. I'm making a point to put on my Patrick Kane sweater tonight, because it's probably going to be one of the last times I get to do it while he's still part of the team. The Rangers, to me, seem like a great landing spot for him, because remember, they've got Artemi Panarin, one of his former Blackhawk teammates and one of the guys that he gelled with so well in Chicago. The bread man, he and Kane were able to work so well together. I'm sure that Kane, who has a no trade clause, so he has, at the end of the day, Kane goes where Kane wants to go. If he wants to stay in Chicago, there's nothing anybody can do to stop him. But if he wants to go somewhere, he gets final say over where he goes. I'm sure there's a part of him that would like to go to New York and play with one of his former line mates, one of his former really good friends that he knows he'll have success. As for the game tonight, now the Avalanche come in. It's Francouz now in net. Darcy Kemper is gone. Is that a plus or a minus for Colorado going into this game in your eyes? Well, okay, maybe not necessarily in this game, in the season for Colorado.
Yeah, well, they liked Pavel Francouz for a long time. There were talks even all the way to the Cup final last year about who do we go with? Do we go with Kemper? Do we go with Francouz? They almost felt obligated to go with Kemper because of how much money they spent to get him. But there are a lot of people in this Colorado organization that thinks Francouz is good enough to be a number one. We're going to see if he is this season. Now, one thing that Colorado did in the offseason is not only make Francouz the number one, they've also given themselves really good goaltending depth because, remember, they went out and got Alexander Georgiev from New York, who has been a really good backup for the Rangers, backing up Igor Shesterkin, who won the Vezina last year. So you've got a really nice 1-2 with Francouz and Georgiev now between the pipes for Colorado, and we know what they also have with Nathan McKinnon and up and down the line. But remember, they don't have Nazem Kadri. He's off in Calgary now.
Yeah, as we use that to springboard a little bit here around the NHL, who do you like right now as we look at it as the season is starting? Who do you like in the West? I still keep coming back to Edmonton just because, as my co-host on the NutriZone, Zach Puplis, always puts it, they put up video game numbers on offense, but I still feel like Edmonton, I don't know if they answered the goalie question. And as we all know, when you get into the playoffs, the goalie question is the big question. Who do you like in the West as this season gets started?
Yeah, the Oilers are an easy pick because they finally made the playoffs and then started to win playoff games and then series. That was always the question with the dynamic duo with McDavid and Draisaitl is, could they make the playoffs and win series? Because remember, for a long time last year, it didn't look like they were going to make the playoffs. Then they make it all the way to the conference final. I am with you. The goaltending position is still not 100%. It got better when they went out and got Jack Campbell. It's not foolproof, if you want to use that term, but it got a little bit better. But I also worry with Edmonton about this. And yeah, they are the flavor of the month pick for the West. And yes, when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you are going to put up video game numbers. You are going to win games just because of those two. But I'm a little bit concerned still. The concern has been before last year's playoffs, can they get secondary scoring consistently enough? Can they get scoring from, I'm just throwing out names here, Evander Kane, Warren Fogle, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jesse Puljujarvi, Tyler Yamamoto. The secondary scoring that they need consistently, especially in the playoffs, we'll see. Obviously, they have a great chance to get to the Cup final. Colorado obviously has a great chance as well. They now know how to go out and win a Cup. but I really like Calgary too. Everyone thought Calgary was going to nosedive when they lost Johnny Gaudreau, but they bring in Jonathan Huberdeau from Florida. They're just reloading in Calgary. I like them as well. I really do.
Calgary's my number 2. It feels like we are destined yet again for an all-Canadian Western Conference final, which, frankly, I'm fine with. Those all-Canadian games are great. My gosh, the passion and energy and excitement. When the Flames lost Gaudreau, you thought, oh boy, this is looking like a little bit of a sieve in Calgary. We're seeing all these good players leave, and then Huberdeau comes in. It's, oh wait, never mind. They'll be fine. It's okay. They'll be all right. They'll be okay. All right, now we are going to transition out of hockey, but before we do, I know you are a Hurricanes guy. It would be very rude of me to not let you give a little bit of a teaser of your Carolina Hurricanes as they also get ready to start the season tonight. And then we'll finish the show with a little bit of college football, but I'll give you a chance to brag about your Hurricanes a little bit first.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a big year for the Hurricanes, celebrating their 25th year as known as the Hurricanes. Obviously not the 25th year of the franchise, formerly known, of course, as the Hartford Whalers, but 25th year as the Carolina Hurricanes, and they're getting a big reward for it on top of that. Carolina's going to play for the first time an outdoor game, and they're going to get to host it at Carter Finley Stadium, home of NC State football. They're going to host the Stadium Series game against the Washington Capitals. That's a huge honor. Just about every team in the NHL now has played an outdoor game, but Carolina has not. So that kind of shows that people are paying attention. I know Carolina's not a big market team. They're not going to be on national television every night, but it is kind of that check mark in saying people are paying attention to what they're doing here, and the NHL wants them to host an outdoor game. So that's going to be so special, and the team is really good. Went to Game 7 in the second round with the Rangers last year, lost at home, and once again, for the second straight offseason following a second-round playoff exit, they went to work. The front office and Rod Brindamore went to work on getting this team better prepared to win in the postseason. They won the division last year. I don't know if they much care about the division this year. This is all about, let's get to the playoffs, let's win the whole thing. A lot of people think they have a good chance to do that. They bring Brent Burns in on the blue line from San Jose. They get Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan, two really good players from Vegas. They got Pacioretty, well, they got both for basically nothing. It was a total steal. And they hope that Frederik Andersen can be the Frederik Andersen in goal that he was last year. He was playing on a Vezina level, got hurt with, 2, 3, 4 weeks left in the season, and then we never saw him again. He never got good to come back for the playoffs, and it was really goaltending that ended up being the demise of the team without Andersen, and Antti Ranta was forced to step in for most of the postseason. So, if Burns, Pacioretty, and Coghlan does what everyone thinks they will do, and Pacioretty's going to miss the first part of the season with injury, but if they do what everyone thinks they will, if Andersen plays the way he did last year, and then the core group continues to progress, Sebastian Aho, Svechnikov, so on and so forth, this Carolina team is going to be really good again, and it's, like I said, all about the playoffs. I don't know how much they care about the division this year, and the division is loaded, the Metropolitan. But yeah, it's all about the playoffs. This is Stanley Cup or bust for Carolina. And I got to say, and you as a Blackhawks fan, you know that feeling. That's a lot of pressure, but as a fan, that's a really good place to be in. When you know you're good enough to start your season and say, it is Stanley Cup or bust, we know we're that good. That's a good feeling.
Oh, it's the best feeling. It makes the regular season, in some ways, it makes the regular season feel like it's forever, because you just want to get through it and get to the playoffs. But on the other hand, it makes the regular season a lot more relaxing too. You know, when those inevitable clunker, oh, how do we lose that one 5-1 to that team? Well, it's okay. We know that we'll be better than that. We'll be in the playoffs and they'll be home watching on the couch. It'll be okay. That feeling is always what you want to go for in all sports, but especially sports like hockey. And Pacioretty, yeah, they literally stole him from Vegas. That was Vegas saying, here, take this player because we can't afford him. We'll figure out a trade later. All right, we do have a little bit more to go on before we get out of here. We got to talk a little bit of college football because USRN, USRN2, IESR, and our sister station, Wellington Sports Radio. Matthew, you've been doing such a great job of lining up great college football games every Saturday on those networks and even letting people like myself stumble through play-by-play a little bit. That's a lot of fun doing play-by-play. Illinois finds itself in a position it hasn't been in for 11 years this week. The Fighting Illini are ranked. They're 24th in the AP Top 25. Am I wrong? And again, in an outsider's opinion here, am I wrong for looking at the Illini and thinking they've got a chance at showing up in the Big Ten title game? I know that the Big Five bowl games, all that's way down the road. But the Big Ten East, that's going to be Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan and Penn State are playing each other this week. That is what it is. That's going to sort itself out in the East. The West is crazy. I mean, going into last week, Northwestern was technically in first place in the West because they had won their only conference game. Never mind, they'd lost the other 4 or 5 games they had played. They won that week 0 game in Ireland against Nebraska, so they were technically on top in the West. Am I crazy for thinking that Illinois could be there in the Big Ten title game in a couple of months?
No, you're not crazy because anyone out of the Big Ten West could. It's amazing what the Big Ten West has become. It is so wide open. And, you know, you're looking at Illinois. They lost by 3 to Indiana. If not for that 3-point loss, they're sitting here at 6-0 on the season and 3-0 in the West with a stranglehold on it. So, no, literally anyone could end up in Indianapolis to represent the Big Ten West, whether it's Illinois, Purdue, Minnesota, Nebraska, anybody could. And Brett Bielema has something going, has something started at Illinois, which is very intriguing. You know, they just whipped Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago at Wisconsin. That was a tremendous result for this Illinois team. And then last week, they beat Iowa 9-6. Iowa doing what they do and not scoring points. But no, anybody can win the West, and Illinois's got maybe the best chance of anybody.
Yeah, that Wisconsin game, that game felt like the arrival moment. I know the Badgers are having a down year, and they fired their head coach less than 24 hours after that game. I mean, in some ways, that's a rallying cry for the Illini. Hey, we beat them so bad, they fired the coach. That was how bad we beat them. But that felt like, to me, like an arrival moment, like a statement win for the program. And Bielema seems to be putting things in the right direction for the Illini. They've got Minnesota this week, another big moment. Minnesota's coming off of, I think they were on the bye last week, and then before that, they lost at home in a conference game. I believe it was Purdue beat them, and that was Minnesota's homecoming, and they couldn't hold up. So the Big Ten West is going to be all kinds of fun to keep an eye on and keep track of. This game for Illinois against Minnesota, it's at home. Yes, as I pull up and look at the schedule, we're going, yes, it's at home. Any reason to think that it's not winnable for Illinois?
No, Minnesota's favored by 6. I'm not fully sure where they get 6. Now, I don't know if Muhammad Ibrahim is going to go for Minnesota. They're a terrific running back. He missed that game that you mentioned a moment ago when they lost to Purdue. So we'll see if he's going to be able to play in this game. If he does, that helps Minnesota obviously out a ton. But Illinois could win either way, whether he plays or not. Like you said, it is a home game. They've got momentum. They've got this feeling around the program that hasn't been there in a long, long time. Tommy DeVito is playing extremely well at quarterback. So let's see. I would say Illinois, in my mind, should be the favorite to win this game.
Yeah, DeVito's playing extremely well. Chase Brown is having a season for the ages at this point, too. He's got coming into this game 879 yards rushing through the first 6 games for Illinois. So it's something we're starting to keep track of more here at Chi-Town Weekly, is a little bit more of the college angle, and Illinois making it fun to keep an eye throughout the Big Ten. Well, this was a lot of fun, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, a special Wednesday edition of Chi-Town Weekly.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. Can't wait to get to do and watch some more hockey tonight, because you know I love hockey. So watch the Blackhawks tonight and watch the Bears tomorrow.
All right, and you can follow along with all those games. USRN, Matthew's got the call tonight for the Boston Bruins, Washington Capitals game on USRN. USRN also will have the Blackhawks and the Avalanche later tonight, and you can hear Matthew tomorrow night, Bears and Commanders on USRN. That is going to do it for our show. Thank you for being flexible, everybody, with schedules as we got everything going today instead of Monday. We will be back regular time next week, next Monday, 7 o'clock Central. We will break down Bears Commanders. We will have probably some Illinois news. We'll be talking Bowls. We'll be previewing the Bowls season as they are a week away from tipping off the regular season for real. They wrapped up the preseason last night. Ayo Dosunmu is going to be the starting point guard, so we've got all kinds of news and things to break down there. Might have Davidson on. We'll talk with Davidson, see if he's willing to jump on for a little bit. And, of course, other news and notes and tidbits all throughout the week. You know how we do it here. Thank you to Larry B. All the hard work that you do at IESR, keeping us moving, keeping us going, revamping the website, all the hard work you're doing, Larry. It is noticed. Thank you again to Matthew Owens of USRN Radio for being our guest today. You can follow him on Twitter at Matthew Owens, PXP. Find him there. Find this show at IESRC on Twitter. I am at Adam_Karnick. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised, Emlos Great, Key to the Gate, Anonymous. Thank you to Taryn and to Mike for hanging out in the chat room with us this afternoon. Finally, thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. It makes this so much more fun and enjoyable to do. Makes it all worthwhile. Coming up later tonight on IE Sports Radio. It'll be the show that never sleeps. Harrison and Pierre will be breaking down all things New York. I'm sure Pierre is excited about the Rangers' win last night over the Lightning, so be sure to stick around for them. They are at 7 o'clock Central tonight. Until Monday, I am Adam Karnick. Everybody have a great week. Bear down. We'll see you on Monday.